we have another guest in the background. We are joined with the woman herself, retired Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski.
Very good.
Yes. Yes. Nailed it. Karen Kwiatkowski, she's a retired Air Force officer who assignments included duties as Pentagon desk officer, various roles in the National Security Agency. She's author of several books, including African Crisis Response Initiative, Past, Present, and Future, and also Expeditionary Air Operations in Africa, Challenges and Solution. Karen, thank you for joining me on this one. You were one of the people who I thought of when the story came out because I'm very curious on your take on this. So the United States attacks Israel attacks Doha, let's be honest, with the help of the United States, because of air defense, nothing like that came on, right? Trump is acting like, I didn't know anything about it. I'm so angry at Israel, and blah, 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 blah. All of this nonsense. This was a lay-in-wait attack, just like Soleimani and just like what took place with Iran, where they were lulled into this false sense of security and then attacked. All right. They have Arab Islamic Summit, where you have like 50 nations coming together to have this conversation about what are we going to do about Israel's expansionary agenda. And it is expansionary. At this point, they're not hiding the ball. They're talking openly about greater Israel and the countries that they're going to have to go into. Netanyahu is making speeches saying, I will bomb anywhere that I need to. Egypt, Turkey, Doha, wherever it is. We will hit whoever we need to hit. Mm-hmm. And so the question was always going to be, what are the nations going to do? Even if these guys are vassals, they see themselves as something different, which you could see in Qatar, where they seem to be shocked by the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Saudi Arabia comes out of the blue. Now, they say these negotiations have been taking place for years. Right here, Saudi Arabia, nuclear armed Pakistan, some mutual defense pact. And one of the most interesting things in this pact, it says, asked whether Pakistan would be obliged to provide Saudi Arabia with nuclear umbrella. A senior Saudi official told Reuters, quote, this is a comprehensive defense agreement that encompasses all military needs. Basically, if Pakistan is attacked, or if Saudi Arabia is attacked, both would have to respond in the defense of the other. Let's step into that. Give me your take on this. I'm very curious on your take on this, being somebody who's in the Pentagon.
Well, I mean, you can see that the unipolar power, the big one, the U.S., that many of these, unfortunately, many of these Gulf states are vassals to, or in some way dependent on the United States in the past. They realize what the whole world realizes, and that is that the U.S. capability is shrinking to do anything honorable. Okay, I think they actually used to trust the U.S. in some extent, but after Qatar and after some of the things that have been done that you mentioned, these assassinations out of the blue, the lying in wait, this has broken the trust. Now, trust was probably broken in many ways long before this, but these are kinds of things that really cause you to change your assumptions. And I think what Saudi Arabia is doing, and Qatar and these other, many of the Gulf Council, Gulf Cooperation Council countries are doing, is looking around and saying, who's really going to stand for our interests? And the other thing is that drives into this. And of course, the nuclear thing is cool. Now, you remember when Iran was attacked in that so-called, when Israel attacked Iran and then we bombed Iran, you mentioned that the so-called 12-day war earlier this year. Pakistan said to the world publicly, I don't remember what the format was, that they have nukes and they would protect Iran. Now they don't have an agreement with Iran. They do trade heavily with Iran, and they are not unfriendly with Iran, but that was kind of I think a precursor to what everyone over there is thinking. And that is, how can we do two things? One, how do we protect ourselves from Israel? And that means Israel and the U.S. Even though many are allied with the U.S., apparently that alliance means nothing in terms of their own security. They are all targets of assassination, potentially, if they step in the wrong direction. So how do we protect ourselves strategically? So they're all thinking about that. But also, too, Gaza has activated the populations in these countries. Some of these, we have they have elections, but we consider Pakistan kind of, a military-run society. We look at the various kingdoms, and we see those as elite-governed monarchies or whatever. We don't really see democracy like America likes to talk about. But these leaders are quite aware of their people's opinions and feelings. So, and they're very angry that their own governments have done nothing about Gaza. And they go, why, we of all people should be defending Gazans, should be defending Palestine, and we're not. So they're responding, I think, in some respects to the reality of the world that they see becoming, the U.S. is playing a smaller role, Israel is out of control. And then they're also trying to reflect and get in front of their own population's view of what needs to be done.
Yeah, I also have to think that at this point they realize that when it comes to Israel, the U.S. is not going to protect them on this.
Oh yeah, I think they know that now. Yeah, if they didn't know it before, I think it's extremely clear now. And also, it's not just that the U.S. isn't protecting them. We facilitated the attacks. We killed the Iranian general that was Soleimani. We killed him. We planned an assassination and killed him. We bombed with the most incredible long-range bombs, according to Trump, right? Wasn't that a big, beautiful bombing? He loved that. We did that, working directly with Israel, and forcing the submission of some of our Arab and Gulf state allies to make that happen in Iran just several months ago. And then, of course, what we did now, Trump knew everything about that, and he approved it. The best case you could say is, well, I approved it because I had to, because it was already launched. There was nothing I could do. So I could either look weak and say I didn't approve it and they did it over my protests, or I approved it to make myself look like I'm stronger. And that would be typical Trump. He cares about, he wants to look powerful. So the worst thing he could do is say, well, I told him not to do it, and I warned him against it. And then when they told me I told him to turn back, and they all ignored me. Well, he doesn't want that publicized. So in any case, he approved it. He approved it because he had to, and probably because he wanted to. I think Trump's view is very similar to Netanyahu's. Why that is, we can analyze, but he views, just like Netanyahu, that you can kill, if you kill and destroy the one that you hate, your enemy, whatever that is, like the other leader that's messing with you. If you can destroy him and threaten his family or intimidate him or her, then you can get your way. It's a game of intimidate. It's a game of it's poker. It's like poker with arms. So that it's like mafioso way. Which is not the real mafia, of course, but the way we see it on television. Like watching Goodfellas or something like that.
Yeah, Goodfellas. Yeah.
Not real. I don't know how the real mafia is, but of course the TV mafia is, if you have a problem, you cap it, you decapitate it, right? So I think that's how Trump views things, and that makes him, of course, very dangerous for everyone. And we're seeing that domestically too. Trump's like, well, it looks like some Antifa people killed Charlie. I think I have my own views. I think a lot of people do about who killed Charlie and why, but if it's Antifa, Trump's like, oh, we're going to get Antifa. We're going to go after them. We're going to stop them from operating. So this is his view. It's a very simplistic view about dealing with things, which means that the Gulf states, as they see how Trump operates, is very similar to the way Netanyahu operates. Whether that's because Netanyahu talked him into it or whatever, we don't know, but it's very similar. And that means there's no trust, and they must defend themselves, and they must get their act together, or continued assassinations with the U.S. assisting with, stand downs of radar, like in Qatar, like they did. Those missiles were not even, no alarms even went off. Well, that's American. That's what we did. I don't think, you could say, well, maybe Israel had a bug in the system and could do that. Maybe they could, but I think we were definitely a part of facilitating the assassination of that Hamas team. And why would we do that? Because Netanyahu and the U.S., they don't want a settlement. They want Palestinians dead. They want them dead. And within months, we will see, well, we're going to see them dead, because not just the 500,000, and I think the number is 500,000 or 600,000 killed now through
Yes.
war and rubble, but also the what's coming as the weather gets a little cooler and the starvation spreads throughout even more people. It won't take much. It won't take much. And you know, I wouldn't put it past the Israelis or the Americans to do kind of what we tried to do with Cuba years ago. Remember, the CIA had some sort of swine flu or something that they tried to put infected pigs on the island to see if they could start a thing. You know,
Kill people.
so
Yeah.
biological warfare would probably be the next step. But being that the people of Gaza are so weakened and unsheltered and starved right now, it wouldn't take biological warfare. You know, I mean, a flu or a dysentery or any kind of thing spreading in these concentrated areas will kill the rest of them. And that is the objective. That is Israel's objective. And it is also the U.S. objective, because Trump wants to get it over with.
Yes.
He's unable to negotiate it. He's unable to stop the weapons. He can't control Netanyahu. He likes Netanyahu. They're tempting him with this vision of real estate development in Gaza, which Trump still hangs on to. And there's a lot of people the Brits, the Europeans, there's a lot of people interested in that real estate. And who's not interested in the gas fields that belong to the Gazans? Well, if there's no Gazans, then who's going to stop Israel from exploiting the gas fields? They already are exploiting some of them. They're kind of a shared off of Israel's coast, off of Gaza's coast. But yeah, this is going in the direction that Netanyahu wants it to go, and the direction Trump wants it to go. And the Gulf Council, the Gulf countries, the Arab countries, and others recognize it. And they say, well, what can we do at this point? Well, they should have done something a long time ago, but they weren't organized. And this is just the evolution of power. They are now saying, okay, what can we do? Well, we can have a nuclear umbrella, and that might protect us from a direct decapitation attack
by Israel, who also have nukes undeclared.
Yeah. So I don't know.
I think it's also, I agree with you about this kind of mafioso way of dealing with it. But I think it's hubris also. Donald Trump looks at the U.S. as a superpower. He believes that for all intents and purposes, regardless of what happens, Qatar will still have to deal with him. So he sends Rubio to Israel, and then he sends Rubio to Qatar to try to say, hey, it's okay. We'll protect you for real next time. We just need you to continue to have the negotiations, which you would think, if Qatar has any sense, will be a flat. No, it's outrageous. Saudi Arabia, it's fascinating to me on this, because it seems like they understood very clearly what is happening. This deal that we've made with the U.S., it's off the table. We will get hit and they won't do anything about it.
Yeah.
We need somebody who also has a nuclear umbrella, because Israel has nukes and could use those nukes.
Yeah.
And the problem that Iran has in many respects is you can go back and forth, but at the end of the day, is if Israel decides, well, now we're using our nukes. Okay, well, you've decided as a country that you don't want nuclear weapons. Fair enough. But now you're stuck with the consequences of not having nuclear weapons against two nuclear powers, where Saudi Arabia is like, that is no longer an issue for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, Pakistan, the leaders in Pakistan, and the conversation amongst some of these other countries in the region is, you know, they say, well, we don't want you to develop nuclear power. Nobody can develop nuclear power. See what happened to Iran. You can't develop it. You can't do it. Can't even go there. And it was reported that at some time ago, the Saudi king said, well, why would I need to develop a bomb? I'll just get one from Pakistan. And this is before the last, the attack on Iran's Fordow and the other two sites. So I think they're recognizing that the world has changed. And also too, like, we don't, Americans, we don't pay any attention to us. And Trump is the same way. Trump is, how old is he now? He's in his high 70s or 80 or something like that. He's
pushing 80.
Yeah. So he's of a generation that grew up thinking of all of the Middle East as really a backward place, stupid people, you know, with old timey ways of running their countries like monarchies, you know, and not a lot of people, a lot of desert, oil, but we can handle that. We can exploit that, much like European countries did. And we did that. We did that all of his lifetime, really. And what has happened is the world has changed quite a bit. Have you, I know this last Substack I did, the last article I wrote, I used a picture of the city of Doha, the city line of Doha.
Yes.
My God, we don't have anything like that in the United States. Nothing like that in the United States. These are new, shining, glorious cities. And they have built all that, of course, because they have oil wealth and they've put their money in it.
Yeah.
But that is not the Arab region. That's not the Iran. That's not even the Pakistan that Trump knows. He thinks that this place is much like what we saw in Gaza before they razed it to the ground. And that's kind of, quaint in some ways, urban development. It's obviously Gaza was all city, mostly. I mean, mostly cities, but the cities had a lot of older construction and new construction mixed in. You look at these Arab cities and some of the cities all throughout Central Asia. They're not like that. They are all new, glorious, wonderful things. Now, if you're living in those countries and you see those beautiful cities, and yeah, you may not like your leadership and you don't like the wars, and many in the region do not like that their governments are beholden to the United States. They don't like that. But, they're proud of what they have. They're proud of it. And they're like, we are somebody. There's kind of like an emergence of identity of a player. And then the other thing that goes with that, of course, is the vast amount, billions and billions and billions of dollars that, and they are dollars because still denominated in dollars, of course, gold and I'm sure Bitcoin too, but you have all this money that they have. And these leaders, not at the beginning, but in the past decade, the past 20 years, the leaders of the region had been thinking, what are we going to do at the end of the oil era?
Right.
And it's probably not going to end for some time, but they're thinking already about what they're going to do. So that also is part of a national identity. Anyway, it's worth defending is what I'm saying. So now that they think, hey, it's worth defending, and our enemies are actually in the West. Our enemies are what's left of European capitals, which is very limited in power. Our enemies are Israel, of course, backed up by the United States. So there is a shift going on, and it makes sense, and it's smart, because if they don't shift, more Doha style assassinations will happen. And nobody wants that. So, and plus, to add on to this, just this week, I think Netanyahu gave a speech, and he said, we in Israel, we are the new Sparta. You guys in Israel, all of us are Israelis, you need to think about Sparta. And it's like, do you realize who you're talking to in Israel? I know the Israelis hate I 85% agree with Netanyahu, but I would dare say that 85% of Israelis do not agree with living like Spartans. Like old Spartans.
Constant
Everybody's
war.
in the military, constantly at war, a military industrial complex that drives the entire economy. And Netanyahu talked about this. He said, we're going to develop our own weapons and export them anywhere we want, and they're going to be the best weapons ever. Well, that's fine for Netanyahu at the end of his life to talk about that. But what about 20 and 30-year-old Israelis at the beginning of their life? Is this what they want? I don't think most people do, even if they hate Palestinians. It doesn't matter. That's part of their culture. They've been propagandized into that for decades. But Sparta, that's a big sell. That's a big sell to the people of Israel.
Especially when Israel was supposed to be a safe haven. There's something else I'm curious about. Pakistan has a close relationship with the United States, especially the Pakistani military. And as you pointed out, Pakistan is not a democracy. It's effectively a military dictatorship. I mean, they threw Imran Khan in a cage when he ran afoul of the U.S. The back channel communication saying he was aggressively neutral, and that was a bridge too far. Is that protection, if that's true? Meaning, these seem to cross wires. That Saudi Arabia seems to want to diversify its military capability and get some kind of protection from Israel and the U.S., but the partner that is working with also has a close relationship with the U.S.
Yeah. I was thinking about that because, we do have, we've always, especially during the Bush wars and prior to that, Pakistan was our ally. Of course, we sold a lot of stuff prior to, I don't know, up through the mid 80s, I think, or 90s, we sold quite a bit of military equipment to them. Yeah. But we used Pakistan's intelligence support when we spent those 20 years, which Americans have wiped from their memory, 20 years in Afghanistan. So the Pact intel and Pact military were basically our allies in the fight against Taliban for shared reasons, I guess, in some respects. So we had that. But to me, that was really, I mean, when I think about it now, I think, well, maybe that's pretty transactional. Maybe that served the military leadership in Pakistan pretty well. And now it doesn't serve because Americans like there, we're not coming back. Taliban has shut the opium back down. So, we'll have our CIA selling new drugs instead of opium because they're not producing it anymore. But anyway, that takes America out of that region, and it takes the possibility of graft, American graft, possibility of deals with Americans, and intel sharing is reduced necessarily. It's going to be reduced because we just don't have presence there. And there was never real trust. I mean, to think that there was ever real trust between U.S. and Pakistan, well, there's no real trust between U.S. and Qatar. There's no real trust between U.S. and Saudi Arabia. The trust, but I don't see the U.S.-Pakistan relationship as a fundamental trust relationship. It was, I think, just, it was an alliance. It's a temporary alliance that made sense at the time. So I don't see that. And of course, the other thing, Gaza impacts everything. The people in Pakistan are enraged at what Israel's, the slaughter, the day-to-day slaughter, and the lack of activity, the lack of response from the West, and particularly the lack of response in the region amongst fellow Arabs and Sunnis. I mean, the Sunni Palestinian, Sunni Pacts. So, and they're doing nothing. So this rejection of the United States is very much, I would think, not calculated to reflect the popular opinion, but it does reflect the popular opinion. And that's got to be a good thing for whoever's running, the countries there. So
I heard somebody describe it as a Suez Canal moment, like that they jumped the shark with this attack on Doha, and that this is the consequences of it.
Yeah, I think it's very possible. Also with Israel too, and like I'm far away from, I'm American, I look at this from far, far away. I don't know anything. What do I know? But in the region, in the region who have lived with Israel for decades and decades and have a very, the region, the Arabs there, the neighbors, the Palestinians, the memory that they have and the knowledge that they have about how Israel operates. It didn't start on October 7th. For Americans, it was like, oh, October 7th. Wow, what happened? Let's go see. No. This has been going on forever. This is the second Nakba, really, but it's not really the second. I mean, if you count them, this is a continuous Nakba. This is part of what the Zionist founders, wanted and planned, and they have been doing. So the region knows this very well, and they watch Israel, of course, as you would, right? If you had a rattlesnake in your shed in the back or in your garage, every time you went in your garage, you would know, and you would warn people, there's a snake in there. We need to be careful. Well, that's Israel in the region. So everybody watches, everybody studies. And of course, some of them are compromised. They work with Mossad to get rid of their own enemies. There's all kinds of trading that goes on, but they know Israel. They understand how Israel operates. And what I think they are seeing is what we're kind of seeing too here in America. If you're watching them, you have a guy named Netanyahu. He's on his last legs politically, has been for some time. He's fighting wars on how many fronts is it now? 7, 8, 9?
Yes, like 7 fronts.
He's swearing that he's going to turn Israel into a Sparta. Meanwhile, he's got a small rebellion amongst the IDF. They're done. They're not fighting anymore. You've got a huge, there's a net, I think, for every Israeli coming into Israel to live there, obviously Americans to come take their little part of the West Bank, to settle. You've got 2 that left, 2 that were there that moved out, and they're not, and many of them won't come back, especially if it remains a Sparta. So that's weakness. That's huge weakness. I think we saw it particularly with the Charlie Kirk thing, because the first guy, Netanyahu, first off, has nothing to do with Charlie Kirk. Okay. He, if anything, he should have been able to rely on TPUSA, Charlie Kirk's college organization, to be a good little producer of evangelical Zionist Christians, right? I mean, that's a core group. It's not all of TPUSA, but it's a chunk of them. And they should have relaxed. They couldn't relax, of course, we know, because Charlie had started to think for himself, and he in debating young people who could care less about Zionist Israel, and certainly think that what's happening in Gaza is a crime and it's terrible and it has to stop. So Charlie's turning away, but most people didn't know that. Most people didn't know that till after he was killed. I mean, only people that are looking closely, watching Charlie Kirk, paying close attention, those are the people that knew.
Right.
And that was the environment on September 10th. And what did Netanyahu do? He bought airtime in American media to claim that Charlie was the best friend Israel ever had, and a bunch of other things.
By the way, that was very bizarre.
It was bizarre.
It was very bizarre.
Absolutely. And when people start doing bizarre things and they've been at war for a while and they're corrupt, what do we think? They're at the end of their rope, and they're going to be unpredictable. They're going to be very dangerous, but they're also going to be done with soon. I think Netanyahu has lost it. Now, for Americans to say that, that's one thing. For the region to say that, but I think Israelis see it too, and they're not stupid people. They're incredibly smart. They're incredibly well informed. No, they're propagandized inside of Israel, but the American Jewish population is rapidly becoming anti-Zionist for a number of reasons. The pocketbook. They don't want to send their kids to a place that's at war, right? I mean, if you're an American Jew, you have a free ride. You can serve in the IDF. You can do all these things. It's wonderful. You have a second country, a second passport. But what loving parent is going to send their kid
to a war zone,
Israel, like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And what one's going to say? Oh, well, you can go there, and oh, by the way, maybe they'll put you in the IDF, and you can go slaughter some Palestinians and maybe get killed, because many IDF folks have been. They have faced a military cost, even though technically they're fighting an unarmed population. And not fighting it, they're slaughtering an unarmed population. But there's risk there, high risk for these Jewish kids that come from America. They should not be, and their parents don't want them to do that. So this whole thing is changing. Many things are changing in the kind of awareness and the heart of both America and Jewry around the world, in Israel to some extent, and then of course in the greater South Asia, the Middle East. The attitudes are changing. They're learning. They're responding. And I think a lot of Americans are just going to be on the tail end of it. They're going to wake up and go, "Oh, what happened?" Because we don't pay.
We're not paying attention. Karen, you always have my appreciation. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. She is retired U.S. Air Force officer whose assignments include duties as a Pentagon desk officer with various roles in the National Security Agency. She's author of several books, including African Crisis Response Initiative, Past, Present, and Future, and Expeditionary Air Operations in Africa, Challenges and Solutions. Karen, you have a fantastic day. Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. That was a great breakdown by